So, what country are you from? Oh, I don't have a country. I hate all countries. Haha, yeah. No, but really. Yeah, really. Really? Really. If you don't like countries, why don't you go back to your... So ends another conversation because I dared to be honest. I don't have a country, and if you're like most people, neither do you. Me niego a morir en la vía, ni trabajar para la policía, ni andar de cuento, ni andar de tranza para poder llenarme la panza. People usually think I'm joking when I say I hate all countries. It's pretty widely assumed you should love and swear loyalty to the landmass within the borders of the state that passes laws over you. It's also assumed that countries are a hierarchy, so surely you at least like the good countries like Canada and Western Europe. Why though? I was born a settler on conquered, colonized land. Should I be loyal to the colonizer's state because I was born on land it controls? I grew up under the rule of the same state, a state that took 12 years of my life and brainwashed me into believing all kinds of nonsense about history and how the world works. It trained me to feel inadequate unless I was better than others. Why would I want any of that? It's taken me years to unlearn it. Why should I be grateful? Surely I should feel hoodwinked, cheated out of a real education. The same state stripped millions of people of their culture and drove them off their native land and gave it to landlords and corporations to profit off. The same state makes thousands of people homeless and then polices them ruthlessly. The same state helped occupy Afghanistan for half my life. You expect me to love the state? Of course, you might think I should love the country as distinct from the state. But to most intents and purposes, the state is the country. The state conquers all the land we call countries. It wouldn't be a country without war and conquest. The state then claims ownership of all the land and resources and people under its rule. It forces us into economic systems where we work for the people who rule us. It teaches us loyalty to all national institutions, to the point that hearing someone question them makes us angry. If you think you love a country, you really love the state. Not the current government, maybe, but the state it uses to govern. The state is the political system, the economic system, and the propaganda system. Propaganda is why we believe in countries in the first place. After all, they're not natural and innate. We have to be taught to believe in them. Maps have to be drawn and colored and put up on the walls of classrooms. Enemies have to be created. The state has probably even taught you your opinions on the correct ways to be loyal to it. You've been indoctrinated since day one. That's why people say they love a country. They've been taught to say it. But most people only know a small part of the territory, a tiny percentage of the population, and a few episodes of the history carefully selected for them to learn specific lessons about. When people say they love their country, they usually mean they like the only culture they know and the image of the country that's been crafted for them to believe in. People will pretend to love everything about a country until you press them and they admit they hate most of the same things you do. In fact, the more a person insists they love their country, the more people and places in that country they seem to hate. It's like saying, I love you, but not your personality. Or your face. They say their compatriots are all one big family, when they hate half the population for ideological differences. They hate liberals and leftists and intellectuals and poor people and immigrants. It's a family you don't know and don't want to know. But a country is not people. It's institutions that govern people. When your rulers say they love the country, they mean they love the wealth and power available to the ruling class. But the nation is said to transcend time and personality. It's said to be a lot of things, actually. To believe in all the myths of nationalism is to ignore history and make use of a vivid imagination. The most dangerous yet easily punctured myth is that everything in the country is ours. It belongs to us, the government is ours, the land is ours, everything belongs to us collectively. Alternatively, it's supposed to be ours, we're entitled to it, but a sinister force has usurped it. If you've been told that kind of thing all your life and no one has ever made you question it, you'll believe it. It's fantasy. We should dispel it at a young age like we do with Santa. Son, I know we told you it's your country, but the truth is, countries are just systems of power installed by the last conquering army. Regular people owning a country doesn't make any practical sense. If you live in a rented apartment and live paycheck to paycheck, in what way does any of this belong to you? Only in your imagination. Now, imagination is really powerful. That's why propaganda can create a fantasy world that people are only too happy to inhabit. People kill and die for imaginary ideals and vague causes every day. They can even legislate the truth, so that anyone trying to teach accurate history can be silenced and the fantasy can continue to metastasize. To say a country is yours because you grew up there, or even because you're the latest offspring of 10 generations of people from there, that's the propaganda talking. In the real world, most people own nothing. A few possessions, possibly a dwelling and a conveyance, not property, just stuff. They don't own the land. The state takes control of the land and leases a lot of it out to developers and landlords and corporations. They own it, as in they make all the decisions over it. You make none of the decisions over it. You can't even paint the walls in your apartment without permission. You don't own any part of the economy. Whichever country you live in, a small group of people own all the biggest brands. Their ownership of the economy gives them ownership of the government, too. No matter how much it gets called a democracy, no matter what the constitutions say, there's a group of owners that own everything, and a much larger group who's locked out of decision-making. A population is millions of people indoctrinated to believe they own everything, and a few thousand people who really do. That's why movements to take back our government, or whatever, are doomed to fail. It was never yours in the first place. It can never be yours. It can pass a few laws you like and then spend the rest of the time helping the rich plunder the poor. That's how it's structured, to maintain and strengthen the power of the powerful and resist any attempts to change the situation. Do you own the country because you pay taxes to the state and the state owns the country? People seem to think because they pay taxes, they should get to dictate everything that happens with those taxes. But the system has never worked that way. All it means is the state makes you pay for what it decides to spend your money on. Not that you own the country or the state, just that you work for it. Employees work. They don't own the corporation. Slaves work. They don't own shit. You work for the state because you're subordinate to the state. On a side note, you might have noticed that while nation-states tell their subjects, you own everything and the state is just managing it for you, it doesn't apply this logic to other nations. The British Museum, for example, contains artifacts from nations all over the world, sacred historical objects that apparently don't belong to the nations they were pilfered from. Those nations aren't allowed to have them back, but they can come visit them if they can afford to and are granted a visa, which they can't and won't be. As people are taught the country belongs to them, they're encouraged to identify with everyone who was ever born within the territory the state currently occupies. I should say they can identify with everyone they know about. Since the histories of millions of women, enslaved people, native people, and others have been erased, we don't learn to identify with them. So I hear people talking about how we won World War II, and I always think, oh, were you there? You look great for your age. The war ended 80 years ago. Unless you're over 100, you can't have contributed to it. Why do we get to identify with the heroes of the past just because we're from roughly the same part of the world? Do you also identify with the colonizers, the slave owners, the soldiers who committed genocide? Why do some dead people belong to you while those others don't represent the country? Even though they obviously do. Same with the Olympics and the World Cup, when people talk about how we won something they had nothing to do with. Same with inventions. Something was invented somewhere and people from that country say we invented it. You You were not involved. We minus I equals they. A small group of people you've never met were the only ones involved. But nationalism lets us pretend there's something special about the only part of the world we really know. We get to claim anything good that happened in that corner of the world reflects on us, even if it happened in a completely different era. It's just narcissism. And I'm a bit confused about people's loyalties given what they claim to believe in. Like, if you're a Christian or a Muslim, let me ask you, do your holy books say we should split ourselves off from others based on where we were born and follow the dictates of our local rulers? Or do they say to unite with your fellow humans as siblings and equals? Maybe it depends which part you read, but there's no way God has a favorite country. Again, it's just narcissism. You're not favored by God because you wave the flag of the people who own the country you were born in. But if you did own a country, you might feel possessive of it. You might want to protect it. That's why so many people get tricked into blaming everything on someone else. A lot of the time we get tricked and manipulated, it's because someone is offering us something we want. We have all these problems with complex causes, so when we look for someone to blame, the people who profit off the problem offer us scapegoats. There's the foreigner who will change our perfect community. The poor people who cost us money. The Jew who secretly controls everything. The subversive who has a problem with arbitrary authority and concentrated wealth that hide behind a flag. The illusion is that we're united in owning and loving this country because that's what we've been told all our lives, and we never realized we could question it. If someone disagrees, they should be punished, maybe kicked out of the country so they can never change anything. Only our local rulers are allowed to make change. But they don't make change. They use their power to hurt their scapegoats in the name of the country. The state is the country after all, so if the state says to kill, you're killing for your country. So it must be right. But you don't know the people you're killing or the people you're supposedly killing for. Do you like the people from within the borders of your country more? How do you know? Are those millions of people you don't know more worthy of life than this other group of millions of people you don't know? Why are people willing to kill any number of innocent people in the name of protecting another group of people? This kind of double standard explains why racism and nationalism go hand in hand. They both involve splitting people into groups and placing them on different levels of a hierarchy of value based on arbitrary criteria. If we were brought up to see people as equal to us, not disposable but valuable in themselves, we could recognize and resist attempts to divide us. Instead, we're raised to see ourselves as part of a group that's inherently different, and we have a duty to fight for the state when the state says so. So does anyone really have a country? Or do we just have rulers and their propaganda? Why would we feel loyal toward them, their laws, and their property? Why are we more loyal to their system and people who live under their jurisdiction than to anyone else in the world? Why do we just accept all this? Well, most of us never learned to think differently, but now you have. Subscribe and you'll learn lots more.